Yo, 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 yo. What's up? Welcome to this episode of the Conclusion Podcast. This is episode 2. You got myself Needful Things. You got my man Beware 84. What up there, people?
Yo, what's going on, everybody?
So this podcast is a very special one because we're going to talk about some things, especially about our hometown and what's going on down there. Now, I know you experienced a situation last night where you were in your neighborhood, and there's some things that you've seen and I've seen and that we post to our Instagram. So check out our Instagram pages in order to know what we're talking about with tonight's topic. So why don't you elaborate what you've seen in your neighborhood?
Oh man, let's get started.
Yep.
South Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
We got a lot of gentrification going on.
Yes, sir.
And now that has its pros and cons, which is good because they want to build up the neighborhood and stuff like that. But I think there's more cons than pros at the moment. So since December 17th, they started doing some construction in my neighborhood, and today is the 22nd. Is it the 22nd?
Today's the 22nd.
Today is the 22nd, and my block is a two-way block underneath the L, which is, of course, the train station.
Uh-huh.
People call it the L from back in the days. And it's a major bus trafficking as well. So 19 bus flies through there. And, of course, we have a lot of just residential traffic.
Mm-hmm.
What they did was they ripped up the entire block minus a quarter of the street on the opposite side. And I understand that they were doing, changing copper piping and stuff like that. On my block, we have 4 residential buildings. We also have a barbershop that's been there since the 70s. We have new to the neighborhood, Juice 8, which is a brand new juicing place that just opened up, which is needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Small businesses,
Mm-hmm.
great thing. We also have a pet store and a hardware store. So there's a lot of little things right on my block, right on the stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that stretch of block is a pretty long block. And since they ripped up the street like that, they caged us in.
Mm-hmm.
They fenced in. So our only exit once we come out is literally 4 feet in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to either go all the way down to the left, to the corner, or all the way up to the right. And like I said, it's a long block.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For those who want to have a better understanding of what we're talking about, go to M Media Group Instagram page, but definitely check out Beware 84 Instagram page with the video that he posted last night to know what he's talking about. Now, what we're talking about is a portion of New York City up in the Bronx. And like you first started, gentrification is going on in the entire neighborhood in the Bronx. A lot of the neighborhoods are changing. And like you said, it's good in a sense, but it's in a sense it's a con more than a positive for the neighborhood. And when I seen that video that you posted last night, to me it looked like a trap. Like if a fire happened, what would happen to people on one side of the street where firefighters can't get through, EMS, the police department, anyone. What about an elderly person or someone who has a wheelchair that needs to cross the street, so they have to walk all the way down one block to get to the next?
Absolutely.
So, looking at that, in my opinion, I think the planning wasn't done properly in order to think about the people in that neighborhood and what could possibly happen to them and their safety.
With the planning, I don't think planning was done at all. Shout out to Ruben Diaz Jr.
Yes.
for hooking that up.
Yep.
Because he's part of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think it kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm.
You pick 12/17 to 12/31,
mm-hmm.
date right in between the holidays,
mm-hmm.
to rip up an entire neighborhood.
Yep.
And pretty much disturb the peace. You know what I mean? We have a lot of elderly here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hazard all around.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of my neighbors here were all minorities.
Mm-hmm.
All of us. We're Hispanic, Black. I mean, that's what we are here. This is the South Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
If this was Midtown,
Mm-hmm.
that shit would have happened in 2 days. They would have
Uh-huh.
ripped up the street and they would have paved it the next day.
Yep.
We wouldn't have nothing closed. We wouldn't have been fenced in.
It'd have been overnight.
Nothing.
It'd have been done overnight.
Overnight.
They'd have called it
And
murder.
over here, they got like 5 guys. They're ripping up the street. The other guys having a sandwich and the other one's having coffee. It's crazy.
Yep.
There's no care.
It goes back. It goes back to the same thing with Lisa Everett and her experience journalism that's going on with New York City housing, where things are going on where things are not being fixed. Housing has been around for a very long time. Gentrification is making a neighborhood beautiful, but you're not fixing the infrastructure that was already there.
Correct.
A lot of people in the communities can't afford to move out into those new, nice complexes that are surrounded by old complexes that are not getting fixed up.
Correct.
It's nice for the community, but it's also it also comes a point where you have to ask, what is important to the people of the neighborhood that is already there. You're uplifting it for change, but if you still have crime in certain communities where people need jobs, education, technical training in order to do a trade in New York City to actually help construct those different places to afford to live there, things like that. I think it would make a difference. But when I go down there to the Bronx or Manhattan, Brooklyn, I see it coming up, but I don't know if people in those communities are getting those jobs in order to afford those places that are being re-gentrified.
I don't think. I mean, to go off of that, I don't think they are. I mean, they're building the community up, like you said. In my neighborhood alone, I have one brand new building being built up next to my area. Mm-hmm. Around the corner, I have another building being built. And across the street, there used to be a parking lot where you could pay for parking. And that was just sold to build the building. Now, these buildings are being built, but I don't think we as the regular middle class are the ones who are going to be able to afford these places. And that's another thing that we have to speak about. Because they always speak about affordable housing, but affordable for who?
Yep.
Because if you ever see the applications, there's always a minimum that needs to be made and a maximum. And a lot of these people can't even make the minimum.
Yep.
But they're considering it, affordable housing. But it's not for us. You know what I'm saying?
To my knowledge, with affordable housing, especially when it comes to the city or anywhere, a certain amount of apartments are allocated for affordable housing for people who rent will be income driven.
Yes. And
then a lot of the other apartments are allocated for people who got money that can afford it, and it's not based on income driven. It's based on the fair market value of the apartment.
Correct.
It's good in the sense that they allocated certain apartments for people who are income driven. But it still doesn't fix the situation in those communities where, there's a lot of crime going on, and the infrastructure of those apartments need to be fixed, or the streets where, the streets need to be fixed, but are you concerned with the safety of the people of the community to get around those streets? So it goes back to that saying in Midtown, if this was Midtown and a street was dug up where people couldn't cross the street, it was affecting not only the community, the businesses. It's Christmas, people are going shopping, people going to the supermarket. It's affecting the businesses, because what if there's two stores that are competing across the street? Then you're going to have, if you have a complex above your store and across the street is just, all businesses, and people don't feel like going from one block to the end to go to your business, then you're losing business. It's not, there's no competition. I mean, that's for anyone. If what I seen, what you posted last night, where I had to walk from one block to the end and my favorite store is on the other side, but I know the store next to me has what I want. Um, I'm I'm not saying I'm lazy. I'm just saying I'm not going to go that far in order to go get something where I can just get it from right here.
Yeah, I understand.
You know, so
Mm-hmm.
could it be? I'm not saying it could be on purpose. Maybe maybe there's some other developments that can go in the area where there's a need for those businesses to possibly move. Not saying that's going on, but there's no way that you can blatantly block off a block like that without someone who who's done this before, knowing that the safety of the people in that community is at risk if EMS, again, fire department or police department, needs to get to those buildings.
I mean, literally, the hydrants on one side of the fence, we're on the other,
Mm-hmm.
and fire trucks can't get to it
Mm-hmm.
because literally the street is ripped and it is blocked off.
Mm-hmm.
So the closest you can get to the building is literally across the street,
Mm-hmm.
which is ridiculous.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, and anyone can leave a comment in the YouTube or on the podcast page, but if I'm not mistaken, I think Chicago went through a similar regentrification probably like 20, 25 years ago, where they had, their projects, their version of New York City housing in Chicago, where the city tore them down, and a lot of the people in the communities were displaced around the city.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, once that happened, different communities were mixed in together that shouldn't have been, and then you had, certain areas where crime was elevated because of the regentrification of certain neighborhoods. Now, I'm not sure if housing or any of the people who are putting this together is looking at it that way, or is it just, someone just saying, let's just close this off. Let's just do this, and we'll get back to it after the holidays, because it's really messed up.
No, it really is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, also, gentrification and what it is. I mean, it's almost a force of driving the lower income out as well.
Of course.
Because
Mm-hmm.
it used to be three different tiers. You used to have the poor, the middle income,
Mm-hmm.
and you had the.
Mm-hmm.
And now there is no, blue collar workers. It's literally you're either poor or you're rich.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when I mean poor, I don't mean you don't have nothing. You're homeless. I mean you're living check to check. Savings is minimal. That's poor. You know what I mean? That's not well off. And doing what they're doing, it's not bringing that poor class back up at all.
Well, the poor class, it goes back to education. It's all about getting those right jobs to those people in the community in order for them to be able to get those jobs, and be able to afford that. But even if they get those jobs, it's kind of like the bridge between poor and rich is so far apart that even if you get to the point of where a middle class income was 20, 30 years ago, can you really afford the cost of rent or buying a house in this market? And that's where it comes down to, where yes, I'm all for job training and, uplifting people in the community. But if you get to that point where you're making $50,000, $60,000, are you able to afford those apartments? Or, are you going to have to, eventually what people do is move down south, move somewhere where it's affordable.
Exactly.
The income is different, but it's more affordable.
Exactly. Just saying that. I mean, housing is more affordable down there, but the cost of living is different as well.
Yep.
So jobs not paying as much as they are here,
Mm-hmm.
but like you said, housing is cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a 3-bedroom house with a front and backyard for under $200,000. You know what I'm saying, down south. Whereas here, $200,000 is not getting you anything. And that's New York.
Well, with New York, especially when it comes to buying a house, the further you move away from the city, the more the houses get cheaper. But the problem is you're paying more in taxes than you're paying on the principal of your house.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people end up losing their houses because A, they can't afford it, or B, they owe the IRS so much money for their property taxes that they eventually foreclose because they owe taxes.
Exactly.
And I think that's what happened in 2008 with the financial downturn, where people were getting loans for these houses that they really couldn't afford.
Let me tell you something. That was the downfall of Washington Mutual.
Yeah, I had a Washington Mutual account.
Absolutely, so did I. But at one point they were throwing out mortgages like they were Skittles and Tic Tacs. Everybody was getting a mortgage from Washington Mutual, and then Chase brought them out, and then the market went crazy, and everybody foreclosed.
Yeah. It goes back to what you said. It's either rich or poor. So I think all of us who's on that scale and know where we at, we know where our finances is. We all know that banks got bailed out in 2010 after the financial downturn, and there was a lot of people who got mortgages and houses where they didn't get the same bailout. They just had to deal with it, and they're still paying for it, and they're dealing with it. And it's very unfortunate. It also goes back to who's in the corner of the people in the community in order to help them, to genuinely help them, when it comes to this, or to generally, hey, stop, you don't need this mortgage, you can't really afford it. Because if they can give you a mortgage right now, you can't afford it, they can just write your mortgage off, sell your house at a lower cost, and they're still going to get paid regardless. But you, on the other hand, it's going to leave a stain on your credit report for a few years. Once you have that stain on your credit report, it's going to follow you when you look for an apartment. Now, jobs are looking at your credit report, well, some, not all. And, it's very tough if you're not on that upper echelon scale where you're making $150,000 a year.
Yeah.
So it's very unfortunate.
It definitely is.
But for this podcast, we wanted to just touch base on the housing market and what's going on, especially what we see in the Bronx. I seen it firsthand with New York City housing today. And, we wanted to make people aware of, the podcast, even though we're going to be talking about hip hop, we're going to be talking about other things. There's certain times where you have to talk about what's going on in the community. Look at what we post, comment on it, at these people, make sure they know that we're aware of what's going on in our community, that we're not blinded by, anything. So, this was an interesting topic. I'm glad to go over with you, my brother.
Yes, absolutely. Know your representatives, know, who's who and who's doing what,
Yep. Get to know your representatives of your community. Like I like to say, vote locally first, and then worry about the other people up at the top. All right? Peace, guys.
Right? And they ripped up the entire block and caged in the entire block. So the only exits you have in this neighborhood right now are one corner and the corner behind me. God forbid there's a fire or an emergency. How do they get to these buildings that we live in?
See how it's moving well? Right out the way.
How? Emergency services can't even get to our buildings here. No fire trucks, no nothing. Fire hydrants, nothing. So are we stuck? God forbid there's an emergency? This would never happen. This will never happen in Midtown. This will never happen.